Well, all right, guys. I don't know if that was a calming enough music. I kind of realized partway through, wow, this is getting a little bit intense on the music there. So, anyway, but hey, I'm excited to get to be with you guys today and to get to share a message with you and share some thoughts and give you some ideas on things that you might want to do to improve upon your business and to get a little bit better and to get more deals done. So here's what we're going to talk about today is I want to go through and talk to you about the idea behind in this company in Everest, John and George, when they created the company, ultimately you have all heard, or hopefully you have heard, and I'd be curious to know if you could list them all potentially, but that we have a company foundation that has 6 items on it that George had figured out these are the 6 things that if he would implement into his business would make him successful because he noticed that's what they were that other agents, excuse me, that other agents had implemented those into their business. Now, I'm not going to talk about the foundation today, but I just want to talk to you about that's kind of the basis of everything that we do is the foundation. Well, then, if you were to ask me, so I've been with Everest now just over 5.5 years, and if you were to ask me to kind of sum up what John and George are about, and Rob as well, when they sat down and created this company, what was it that was kind of the basis of it? Well, the foundation, those 6 pieces is part of it. But then the next thing that you would say, or that I would say, is that it is about leadership. Now, for 5.5 years, I have heard John and George and Rob talk about leadership. Your job is to be a leader. And I remember one of the very first things I ever heard John say when I got with the company is that your job is to be a leader. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. And specifically, any of you that have been around for a little while will know that he used to say consistently over and over again, when you got your license, you didn't sign up. You thought you were signing up to be a real estate agent, but what you really were signing up to be was a leader. Well, so that really is the truth. And I will tell you, the longer I am with Everest, the more I start to understand that as well, that really my job is to be a leader. So I want to talk to you about that today and give you some ideas in terms of leadership and in terms specifically of prospecting and being on the phone to get more deals done. Because at the end of the day, the phone is really where you're going to get your job done, if that makes sense. It's where you are going to it's going to help you get to where you're trying to go. I guess that's probably the way of saying it. So you identify your purpose of what it is that you want. Why do you want to make money from real estate? Once you've identified that, in a lot of ways, the phone is going to be the thing that helps you get there. Now, some of you might say, well, not me, I go out and door knock. Well, I would still be willing to bet that when you're doing lead follow-up from your door knocking, that you're not going back and knocking on the door to do your lead follow-up. You're doing it over the phone. So over the phone is going to be the place that we are going to be making the most impact. Now, when we're doing that, and again, I'm going to hit on a bunch of little points to get to where I'm going to, meaning there are I could do a whole training on most of the stuff that we're talking about, but I'm not going to today. And so the next piece of this in terms of our job is to be a leader. Your job is to lead people through a process. See, don't get focused on the closing and the cashing of your check. Get focused on the next step. I've been really hammering on this lately because I've realized that we get too caught up in the end, the closing, and instead get focusing on just get them to take the next step. See, I've shared in the past that the way that your brain works, 10% of who you are is conscious. The other 90% of who you are is unconscious. So 10% of who you are is conscious, 90% is unconscious. What that means is that there is a whole lot of programming that has gone on here that is unconscious to you, meaning that most of what you do in your life, in fact, let me tie this back to what I said earlier, the Napoleon Hill. Most of what you do in life is because of those thoughts that you're having. See, we have those dominating thoughts of our mind, and they eventually reproduce themselves into outward physical action. That's what he's talking about. See, so for us, part of what's going on is we've got all this programming that is going on under the surface that we don't even realize it's happening. In fact, you may or may not have known this, but your thinking is out of sync with reality by a half of a second. So I'm going to say that again. Your thinking is out of touch with reality by about a half of a second. So because your thinking is out of sync with reality, now here, let me prove it to you, because I'm sure some of you are like, oh, I don't think that's true. Let me prove it to you. Think about a time that you're having a conversation with your significant other, and you get either a little annoyed or agitated or upset, call it whatever you want, and all of a sudden you're saying something and you realize as you're saying it, why am I saying this? This is not going to end well. Well, that is because your thinking is out of sync with reality by a half of a second. Well, if that's true, then this idea behind this, our dominating thoughts will eventually seek expression through some practical means of obtaining the object back of it, comes from that. Is the reason that half-second delay and why you would say something and then realize, oh, shoot, I didn't mean to be saying that, is because this programming that has gone on under the surface. Now, let me tie that back to your clients and you prospecting. So when you are on the phone and you're prospecting, your clients, the people you are, I shouldn't say clients, potential clients, the people you are calling on the phone and talking to, as you are calling and talking to them, what your job is to lead them through a process. And typically, what is happening is they will have made the decision to buy or sell their home long before it gets to the conscious level. See, so it's going on in this unconscious level. Now, here's what let me give you an example of what I mean by that. Anytime you get somebody that you're talking to as a result of, you go out and door knock and they say, well, we have thought about selling our home and buying a new one. You have somebody that signs up on an internet website that is an internet lead, and they now are sharing with you some ideas and thoughts that they have had, or they just the fact that they signed up, actually, we should even just say it that way, is because there's something going on under the surface that they're not aware of. You have somebody that walks into an open house. When they walk into an open house, they are not doing it because they have nothing better to do. See, going to an open house is not something that you're going to do because the football game that you were watching was not good. People don't go, well, this game is kind of boring. Let me go take a look at an open house. No, there is something going on under the surface. So I tell you that so that you can keep in mind that as you are prospecting, you're talking to these people, there is something going on under the surface. Say it another way. They're going to sell their house or buy a new one. It is going to happen. Now, unfortunately, what happens is this, is we say, well, no, there are people that come around that are looky-loos. Okay, yes, there are. But here's what I will tell you, because we did a study on this actually from open houses specifically. 82% of the people who go to an open house will end up buying or selling a property within a 6 to 9 month period. It happens. So keep in mind, I guess, let me say it this way. Are there looky-loos people that just go out just because they like to look at properties? Yes, but it's more like 2 out of 10. The other 8 out of 10 that you talk to are going to do something. Same thing with somebody who signs up on an internet website. They're going to do something. They're just in the early stages and don't realize it. So your job is to lead them through that process and get them to the point that they now recognize that it is up at that conscious level. So what I want to do is share with you some ideas on that. Now, so we've talked in the past about this UCLA study where 7% of communication is the words we use, which as I'm saying that, it actually, and this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but just as I said that, the 7% is the words we use. I got to share with you something that happened last night. So as a family, every night we sit down and we do some scripture study. And last night we were talking specifically about the book of Malachi. So from the Old Testament, the book of Malachi. And my son tells me that his friend was talking, I don't know why him and his friend were talking about this, but his friend are talking about Malachi, and he said his friend didn't know how to say it. And so he said it as Malachi, which I just had to laugh because essentially like he's taking the name Malachi and speaking Ebonics to say Malachi. And if you haven't seen the Saturday Night Live where the guy does that, I think it was Saturday Night Live. Anyway, sorry, has nothing to do with it. 7% is the words that we use. 38% is going to be the tone, how we say the things. See, most of us do a pretty good job on the script of saying the right words. The problem isn't saying the right words, it is how we use those. And I like to think of them as a tool. See, I always give myself a hard time. And one of my dominating thoughts in my mind is that I have bad handwriting. And so, guess what? When I write, it comes out bad. Well, the interesting thing is somebody else could take that same pen and or a marker or whatever and draw something really beautiful. In fact, I'm always impressed when they do that. And I look at that and go, that's the same tool that I'm using. See, a script is really just your tool that you're going to use to set an appointment. But how do you use that tool? How proficient are you at that tool? And then obviously the 55% that's body language. All right, well, so here's what I want to do is I want to give you some ideas since the phone is where you're going to have to do it. So I want to give you some points, I guess, that you should be using on your calls. As you are calling and talking to people, I'm going to give you some ideas of things to do. So here's the first one that I think is you need to be honest, transparent, and straightforward. See, sometimes I will hear people on the phone saying some things that I'm like, ooh, I don't know how you can say that and feel good about yourself. I just personally believe that again, if we go back to that self-confidence formula, then we talk about what it's going to take for us to be successful. Part of that is us being honest and transparent and straightforward. So keep in mind, their goal is to get off the phone. Your goal is to set an appointment. So here's the question for you. Who's better? See, their script is, I gotta go. I'm about to walk into an appointment. Oh, I was just in the middle of something. See, that's their script. And here's the interesting thing. We use the same script. We use it all the time. When somebody calls you that you don't want to talk to, pay attention to what you say and realize, ask yourself afterwards, was that really the truth? Because it probably wasn't. You were saying it to get off the phone. So who's better at their script, them or you? So make sure you're being honest, transparent, and straightforward. Next, number two thing that I think you need to make sure you're doing on your phone calls is be interesting, but also be interested. And maybe I should reverse those and say, first be interested, then be interesting. See, there's a fine line between being interesting and being interested. We want to be interested first to make sure that what is happening is that they know we're interested in what they're saying. Well, how you're going to do that is you've got to pay attention and to listen to what they are saying to you. You got to listen to what they're sharing so that you know where to go from it. See, sometimes we get so caught up on the script that we probably should get off the script for a few minutes and ask a few additional questions that would drill down a little bit deeper to help us understand what is important to them. But because we are so nervous or worried about it, we then start either talking about ourselves or we bounce all over the place. All right, next. Third thing that I think you need to do. Every single phone call that you make, believe that you can make the sale. Every call. And when I say make the sale, I mean set an appointment or get the deal done, whatever that next step is. So remember, I like thinking in terms of next steps, not the closing necessarily. Believe you can make the next step on every single call. Now, most of these, since we're talking prospecting right now, is to set an appointment. Even though you're probably not going to, make sure that you believe you're going to. Now, let me give you an example of that real quick. When I first got my license, my manager had just told me, this is what you need to do. And I always have just been the type of guy that's just like, okay, tell me what to do and I'll go do it. So he told me, this is what you need to do. So I remember I was standing in my office, or in the office. I didn't have an office at the time. I'm standing in the office and I'm in the cubicle and there's this wall that was right. So my cubicle faced a wall right here. Well, it was only, it wasn't quite a full wall. It was like a 3/4 wall. So the wall went, almost to the ceiling, but not quite. Well, my manager's office was right on the other side. There was that wall, a hallway, and then his office. Well, I heard him walking out of his office with a potential recruit. And he was standing right on the other side of the wall. And I don't think he knew that I was listening to what he said. But what I heard him say to this potential recruit was, let's just stand here and listen to him make a few phone calls. Well, as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, okay, I got to be on my game. I got to show them that I'm good, that I know what I'm doing. And it was interesting because the best phone calls that I had had up to that point were not very good. But the moment I knew he was listening and paying attention, and it was my chance to show off or shine or whatever you want to call it, all of a sudden I went to a whole new level in terms of making my calls. Do you ever do that? Do you have times where you just kind of get into this, I'm bored, I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again, and I just don't have the energy and enthusiasm? Well, you need to believe you can make an appointment on every call. Now, I don't remember if I set an appointment on that particular day when that person was sitting there listening. But here's what I will tell you that I know 100% for sure, because it had just stuck in my mind. It sticks out to me still, is it changed the way my calls went because I knew they were listening. And I actually had more of an intention of making a good call. See, sometimes we get into this pattern of just ticking off the boxes, checking the numbers to be able to say, yep, I did my calls, I made my 30 contacts, I could be done and I can go home. Well, no, believe you're going to make a appointment on every call, even though you probably won't. Now, here's the other thing. Since I know we have some people on here that are doing a lot of internet leads, here's what I want you to keep in mind. You're probably going to have to call them at least 8 times to get them on the phone. At least 8 times. But then guess what? You're going to have to call them another 5 to 12 probably to get the transaction closed. So just know your belief, your primary objective, maybe that's the way of saying it. Your primary objective is to get an appointment. Your secondary then is to be able to get enough information to do a lead follow-up with them later on. All right, next piece is identify and solve problems. So on every call, part of what you're doing, if we tie this back to being interesting and interested, to you being interested in what they're saying, is be interested enough to find out what's the problem so that you can then offer the solution. See, ultimately, that's what we're trying to do, is to figure out what is the problem or what is it they're trying to accomplish so that I can help solve that. Be the answer that they're looking for. That's where I'm talking about of leading them, is you figuring out and then saying, hey, I deal with people in this type of a scenario all the time. Here's the next thing we need to do. All right, next one is be respectful, be enthusiastic, but also be memorable. See, don't just be that same salesperson over and over again. Be memorable. Throw out some sound bites. Use some things that are going to help them remember who you are. So now with that, that's why I said be respectful. Don't do it in a way that is not respectful to them, but be respectful, have some energy and enthusiasm, make sure that you are memorable. This reminds me of a time that early on, I had gone out and was door knocking. I came across this for sale by owner. This was in West Jordan, Utah, for you guys that are in Utah. I found this for sale by owner. Knocked on her door. She said, yep, bought a new house, just getting this one ready to sell. It was for sale by owner. I followed up. I am not kidding with you. I never have followed up with a for sale by owner longer than I did this lady. It was at least a year that she was a for sale by owner, and I kept following up. And I remember, no lie, it had been at least a year, and I called her one day and she goes, now who are you? That's where this be memorable things comes from, is I did all this lead follow-up, and after a year of following up with her over and over and over again, she had no clue who I was. Be memorable, but be respectful to be memorable. All right, and then the final point that I wanted to give you guys today in terms of your phone calls, which I talked briefly about at Summit the other day, is you got to close. You have to ask for an appointment. And there's only those 5 ways that I gave you, is what time, which time, how soon, when, and where. What time, which time, how soon, when, and where. Make sure you're saying one of those things. Too many times we say things, would you like to get together? Well, they probably wouldn't like to get together with you. But if instead you said to them, which works better, afternoons or evenings, they're going to want to answer as to which is better. All right. So those are my thoughts for you guys today. What are you going to implement in your business today that is going to help you get more appointments? Don't be afraid of the phone. Be excited for it. See, if we go back to when Alexander Graham Bell invented the phone, the first phone call he made was to his assistant Watson, and he said, Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you. He actually got an appointment with Mr. Watson, if you stop and think about it. All right. Well, hey, thank you for being with me today. Hopefully you got something valuable out of it. I always appreciate you jumping on and spending the time with me. Go out and make it an awesome day. We're going to wrap it up now with doing our closing affirmations. If you have any thoughts or anything, go ahead and throw it in the chat box. But I appreciate you being with me, and let's close it up.